no matter how well your tires handle off-road conditions. There will always be a trail that's more challenging. An easy trail can turn into a deep, slippery mud pit after days of heavy rain. Or you might encounter a tough patch of sand in the middle of nowhere, preventing your tires from gaining any kind of traction. Something so difficult that your bike gets completely stuck and can't move on its own. And in those moments, only the right tool designed for such situations will get you back on track. I've been in situations like that before, and I promised myself I'd never let that happen again. That's why I needed a solution that would allow me to recover the bike on my own without needing the help of a second or third person. It needed to be easy to carry and, ideally, affordable. So I started with some online research and quickly found the Green Chili Z or Z drag system. But even though it looks really good, it seems to be more suitable for light dirt bikes than a fully loaded adventure bike. I also found the Cascade Rescue Kit, which costs a whopping $400, and the Best Rest MRS HD, which still costs $220. And I'm not really ready to pay that amount of money for something I can build myself for less than half the price. So that's what I did. Kind of a lifesaver I wish I had before. But you know what they say, a lesson lived is a lesson learned. And having this with me definitely gives me a little bit more of confidence for the next solo trip. So let's go through and see what we need to build this kit. We have 25 meters and 10 meters of 12mm climbing rope. So I just bought 40 meters of this and cut it to the length I need. Two high-strength double pulleys, two safety hooks, and two ratchet loops, or as I prefer, two strong luggage straps. These components are actually the size you need for a big 1200cc adventure bike. If you have smaller adventure bikes like my T7 or a dual sport like my CRF 250 Rally, then you could get away with smaller 10mm or 8mm ropes and pulleys. But you know what they say, better safe than sorry. Addressing the elephant in the room, this kit is quite big and bulky. I also know there are some synthetic ropes for ATVs, etc. They can hold the same amount of load, but with the length we need, this kit would get ridiculously expensive again. So it wouldn't fulfill the purpose of doing it by yourself. But if you know a cheap source for that kind of rope, please write it in the comments and I'll add it to the kit so that everyone can find it. So how are we going to put everything together? It's actually quite easy. The 10-meter rope is going to be attached to our anchor point, to something like a tree, a root, or in our case, it's going to be the light pole for showing purposes. And in the worst case, you could even just stick something into the ground like a stick or so, or a tire lever, or whatever you have at hand, and use that as your anchor. You just need to bury it deep enough and fill the hole with dirt again. And the other side gets attached to the pulley, which is already connected with the pulling rope. Make sure that when you are attaching the pulley that you use the safety carabiner through these grommets. Otherwise, the rope will always fall down as soon as the system is without tension. For the next step, we're just going to use some of these luggage straps, two to be exact, and wrap them around the fork legs. Why two and why around the fork legs is something I'm going to explain you later, but you will find out why and it will make sense, I promise it. Second one around here. Be careful that you don't pinch any brake lines or hoses or anything. Same principle here with the grommets. Go through, otherwise you're gonna lose the rope from the pulley. And quickly just attach the luggage straps to the pulley. so that it looks like this. Easy, isn't it? After that, we can start with a pulling rope. This is already pre-attached to the first pulley at the anchor point. It's the 25-meter rope. Now I'm going to take the end of that and bring it to the pulley which is attached to the bike. So from here on, we bring the rope just over the first wheel. If it's hard to get the rope over the wheel, you can still just open it. So you have one of the grommet sides. You can just turn it down and lay it over there. And then put it back together. That's way easier. From here on, it's always a good idea to already bring tension in the system. So it's not gonna dangle up that easily when you start pulling when it's getting serious. Oh look, already dangled up a little bit there. Now I'll come to the anchor side of the pulley and do the same. Again, if I can't just slip it through, I can just loosen it up and let it go over the roller. And close it again. And now we're going to do that back and forth until the complete system is put up. So after we do that back and forth, the whole result should look like this. Now we can sit ourselves on the bike or stand next to it and start pulling. As you see, it works quite good. Just be careful that you don't let some ropes or something dangle around, because they're gonna get caught under the tire and then nothing goes forwards. And when the whole system has come to its end, you can just take the anchor side pulley, let the pulling rope loose and start pulling it apart again. When you do that, it's always a wise idea to take the end of the pulling side of the rope and just use a little loop or something to put it over the brake lever so that you don't pull it apart too much. After doing that, you detach the anchor rope with the safety hook. Just see how much length you need and tie another little bow in there. Just barely long enough. Like that. Hook it back in and you can start from the beginning so that you can get closer and closer and closer to the anchor point and out of the mud hole you're stuck in. But don't be fooled, this still isn't easy. It's just that you're not pulling the full 200 kilograms of bike anymore, more about 490 Newton meters, which is somewhere around 50 kilograms of force that you have to pull. Like, I think it's 100 pound, nearly 120. But let's come to a few things that will make your life easier so that you can concentrate on pulling. Remember when I said you should attach one of these to each of the fork legs? When you use one strap or attach the straps to the crash guards, the front wheel will turn left and right like a modern day politician. That will definitely make it way more difficult for you to keep the bike upright. But if you attach one strap to each of the fork legs, it will automatically correct itself as long as there's tension on the system. This will allow you to focus on keeping the bike upright and the act of pulling, instead of correcting the front wheel. Then there's the problem with pulling the bike and yourself uphill. You will quickly realize that as soon as you let go, the bike starts rolling back. This can be reduced by using a prusik, which can be made with another small piece of rope or some luggage straps if necessary. But the main thing is that this will function as brake every time the rope pulls in the wrong direction. It's quite easy, look. You use your prusik and sling it around the rope. You should at least do 2 loops and then pull it tight. So that it looks somehow like this. All right? This should be right in front of the last wheel the rope goes over, because this is the part we're going to pull at. Then you attach the loose end of the Prusik into this carabiner. Now we want to make a quick break for this so that it doesn't pull further and go into the roll by just using a zip tie or whatever we have. Usually we have zip ties with us, especially going off-road, so use them, they're perfect. So as soon as we pull, the rope goes through, but when it pulls back, the Prusik works as a brake. And that's why it's so important that it's just before the last wheel where the rope goes over, because here is the least amount of force. So this isn't under too much tension and you can pull it easily. So again, we move, and as soon as it comes to the zip tie, it's going to stop and let the rope through, but keep its place. When we go back, it pulls on the rope. This will make the pulling up to 5 to 10% more difficult, but it will definitely make your life 100% more easy as soon as you have the smallest incline. And here comes a little cheat code if all of that doesn't help. But be careful, this method puts a lot of strain on the bike's components. You can use the rope alone and just tie it to your rear wheel so that it will do all the work for you. For that, you just have to put the bike either on the side or on the center stand and knot this to one of your spokes, wrap it around the hub once or twice, and you have to be careful that you're on the side with the brake disc. Then you get back on the bike, start the engine, and use the clutch to be very delightful about the power you give to the rear wheel. That will help the bike to pull itself up or out of the puddle where you want to get out of. And in the worst case, you can use this technique with the pulley system in combination. But this technique comes with some caveats. Beware to not lock up the rear wheel by jamming too much windings of this rope in there, or busting a spoke, or tearing the rope apart by putting too much force on it. And it only works when you go up a very straight line towards your anchor point. Even with a slight offset, you risk to damage the brake disc extremely quickly, or you risk that the rope gets tangled up under your rear tire, and as you can imagine, that might lead to a catastrophe. And be aware that you will probably have to put the bike on the side to get the rope out of there again if you don't have a center stand. So you should really consider if you don't want to spend the energy and time by pulling it up with the pulley system yourself. Okay, before we continue and I can go back into the warm garage, I would like to hear from you. Is that something you would use or take with you? Is this kind of content in general something that brings value to you? And I don't know, maybe this is the kind of kit that you always needed and never had with you, or like me, have been stranded in some kind of situation where you would have needed it and didn't have it. So write it down in the comments. I'm going to read it, definitely, because I'm really curious if this kind of content brings value to you and if that's something you want to see. But what is the difference between the DIY kit and the commercial ones? I'll admit, I like the look and the compact design of the green chili Z-Track system. But here's the big issue. It's rated for a maximum of 1,000 pounds or 450 kilograms of working force. As soon as you are pulling a bike out of the mud or uphill, that system could quickly be pushed way over its limits, especially with those big bikes. I actually don't know for sure, but the best rest system seems to be quite the same as the DIY kit, just as a complete finished package for $225, which will be added with shipping and customs, and then quickly will be over $300 here in Europe. And then there's the $420 Cascade Self-Rescue Haul Kit and the $600 Cascade Self-Rescue Haul Pro Kit. The DIY kit, which is for the most parts the same, just admittedly in a bigger form factor and a little more heavy, but costs up to 4 to 6 times less the price, So unless you're an off-road instructor or guide who needs that kit regularly, I'd rather keep a low-cost version in one of the rarely used storage spaces on the bike, like around here or around here, where it's not annoying me, it's not in the way, and it doesn't affect the bike's weight in any negative kind of way. But that's something you would have to figure out for yourself if you want to pay that much money. Before we wrap this up, here are some practical tips to remember. If you're just trying to get out of a small rut or hole, just using the anchor rope and tying it around the hub of your rear wheel can get you out of there with a lot less effort. But remember, that technique has a lot of downsides and brings many dangers with it to damage your bike or even go horribly wrong. So I'd always just use that technique if really necessary, or if I have a very safe environment where I know that nothing can go wrong. Expect dirt and scratches. Off-roading isn't always neat, so don't worry if your bike gets a little bit scratched up, mucked up, or like here, the paint is going off. That's what happens when you take your bike off-road. Especially when you're pulling it over the ground, it tips over or something, and you will just have to expect that. But those kind of scratches can tell a great story later on when you're sitting with your mates around a fire having a beer. Solo use is possible, but it's always easier when you have a helping hand. Shit. Lighter is always easier. Whether you're having 10 pounds or 100 pounds of luggage on your bike, when you're really stuck, take the time, take off the luggage, because that's going to make your life a lot easier. But what do you think? Maybe you found an even better alternative or solution to this 12mm rope that I used, something maybe that doesn't stretch and takes up less space or is more lightweight, preferably for the same price. If you have some advice, just drop it down in the comments. I'd be happy to try it out and update the kit so that everybody can benefit from it. And here's a little insider tip for maintaining your recovery kit. But don't worry, it's not much, doesn't take long, and is usually only necessary after using it. After using it in the mud or wet conditions, make sure to hang up the rope to let it dry. This prevents it from molding or rotting, and also keeps you from carrying around extra pounds of water. And don't forget to spray a little oil on the pulleys to keep the bearings in good shape and prevent rust after use in wet environment. And that's actually all. So now that you are prepared, you should definitely subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs down button twice if you didn't like the video, and check out this video where I could have definitely benefited from the recovery kit. But, spoiler alert, I didn't have it back then. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Alright, that's it. I'm done.